What is up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, just welcome. My name is Gemma Jade, but today I am going to be talking about a case that I've been saying for quite a while now that I'm going to recover this case. I'm going to recover this case because every time I speak to April Arrington about Caleb Smith's case, her son, I think of this case. And it's not because it's similar in really any way. It's that it takes place in the same state, and it gives me the same sort of righteous just anger and sense of injustice every time I think about this case. And I'm still working on getting some software where I can add audio and video, but the last time I did this, it came out really well, and I think I really got the message and the theme of the story across. So here we go. The tragedy of what happened to Jessica Boynton. I don't know how else to put it. At the time of this incident, Jessica Boynton was 19 years old and living with her husband Matt and their two small children, Tolan and Tyler, in the town of Griffin, Georgia. Jessica and Matt were high school sweethearts who met in 2012. Almost immediately after the birth of their first son, Tolan, the couple married on October 24th, 2015. When Tolan was about a year and a half old, the family welcomed another baby boy who they named Tyler. Not long after this, Matthew became a Griffin police officer, and the couple settled into a new 3-bedroom apartment in a complex where Jessica quickly made friends with many of their neighbors. Although most of the couple's family and friends would go on to say they thought the pair had an ideal relationship, most of the neighbors who shared walls with the couple and some who had gotten to know Jessica fairly well told a much different story. According to Jessica's close friend, who also happened to be the woman who lived below them, the couple fought all the time. This woman would later tell police that Jessica kept a secret diary which she hid in her closet that documented all of Matthew's transgressions, such as the affair he was having with a dispatcher for the Spalding County Police, and also how he would take the two children and disappear for days and sometimes weeks at a time and not answer or return any of Jessica's calls or texts when he had them. According to those closest to her, Jessica was relieved to have finally been able to prove Matt was having an affair because now she felt she could file for divorce and get full physical custody of both children. Matthew actually agreed with Jessica that they should divorce and both move on with their lives, and while they waited to start the divorce proceedings, though, the couple decided to remain living together in the 3-bedroom apartment. Things were very amicable in the beginning, however, this didn't last very long. The whole process of going through a separation while still living with the other person and trying to co-parent while under the same roof caused tremendous strain on the family, and things soon took a very dark turn. While Jessica continued secretly documenting everything in her notebook she had hidden in the closet of the master bedroom, Matthew began complaining to his friends, family, and even co-workers that Jessica had been becoming physically violent towards him. He told them she would poke him in the chest and slap him, and that he didn't want to live under the same roof with her anymore. With the future of herself and her two sons in mind, Jessica went and got herself a job at a doctor's office. Her official job title is unknown, as she never made it to her first day of work on April 15th, 2016. Just the day before, on April 14th, 2016, Jessica and Matthew had a huge argument. Here is the timeline of events for that night and the early morning hours of the next day, leading up to and immediately following the incident in question. At around 9 p.m. on April 15th, Matthew called his lieutenant on a personal phone call and told him that Jessica was once again physically abusing him by poking him in the chest and slapping him about his face and body. While Matthew was on the phone with his superior, Jessica brought her kids over to the downstairs neighbor, and now this person who was her close friend's house. According to this neighbor, Jessica was extremely upset and was just trying to get some space between her and Matthew. At this time, after being there just a few minutes, Matthew began to text Jessica and ask if she and the boys would come to Walmart with him, as the youngest child needed formula and Matthew wasn't sure which kind to buy. I'm not sure why he couldn't just take the can of the old formula or bottle or whatever and bring it, but okay. After receiving multiple texts from Matthew in just a few short minutes, Jessica reluctantly agreed to go to the Walmart with him to pick up the formula. Before Jessica left, though, she told her neighbor that when they returned from the Walmart, she and the boys would be coming back to spend the night at her house. Jessica was supposed to start her new job early the next morning, and she was afraid that she would be kept up all night, upset and arguing with her soon-to-be ex-husband. At 10:15 p.m., surveillance cameras at the Walmart showed the family arriving together and walking into the store. Video footage from the store also shows the couple having some kind of argument in the baby formula aisle, which led to Jessica storming out at around 10:30 p.m., but since there is no audio, we are unsure what the argument was all about. While Jessica was storming out of the store, Matthew was making a phone call to one of his co-workers and informing them that Jessica had stormed out and was refusing to go home in the same vehicle as him and the children. About 10 minutes later, however, Jessica does re-enter the store, and the couple and their 2 children are all seen leaving the store together in the family's vehicle. They arrived home a couple of minutes before 11 p.m. with the trip taking about 45 minutes to an hour in total. According to the reports from that night, at around 10:53 p.m., while Jessica was supposedly inside her walk-in closet trying to find the right outfit to wear to her first day at her new job the next morning, an officer responded to a non-emergency call at the Boynton residence. Apparently, Matthew had called the police and reported that Jessica was poking him in the chest and physically assaulting him. The responding officer's name was Officer Trammell, and his report from that night contains what Matthew had said happened up until that point. According to Matthew, right before the Walmart trip, he was on his cell phone while taking a shower when Jessica stormed in, grabbed his phone, and started accusing him of having an affair. Jessica started slapping and poking Matthew in the chest while insisting he admit to the affair if he wanted his phone back. Jessica allegedly refused to give the phone back until he admitted to the affair, and so he did, with Jessica storming out of the house at that point and going to the neighbors. The second incident Matthew reported that night that happened was at the Walmart. He told Officer Trammell that while in the store he had received a text message, which once again made Jessica fly into a rage and storm out of the store, refusing to leave with him and their 2 sons. Matthew also reported that he didn't know how Jessica had gotten home because she had never come back in after storming out of the Walmart, leaving him no choice but to pay for the formula and take the children home while leaving her there. Let me call attention again to the fact that the Walmart footage shows them arguing in the formula aisle, Jessica storming out, Jessica coming back in, and the whole family leaving together. So why was he lying? Officer Trammell took Matthew's report and left, never entering the house or attempting to speak to Jessica at all. And this is crazy to me. I remember one time fighting with an ex and just getting so frustrated. I'm like, F this. I'm going to take a shower. I need to calm down. Getting in the shower and dropping the shampoo, and somebody had called the police, I guess because we were fighting. We lived in a small apartment complex, and the police actually made me get out of the shower and show myself. They didn't believe my ex that we were just having an argument and I must have dropped something in the shower. But this guy, like, you don't even know how this comes into play later. Wait till you hear this. At 12:50 a.m. the following morning, Matthew began texting his best friend and fellow officer Josh Guthrie. The 2 men decided to go for some food and talk at the nearby Waffle House just 4 miles away from the Boynton residence. According to Matthew, right before he left to meet Guthrie, Jessica told him to call an ambulance before he left. When he repeatedly asked why she would need an ambulance, he claims Jessica refused to answer, eventually just slamming the front door in his face. According to cell phone records, throughout this entire night, Matthew was texting his mistress. In fact, they show he had texted his mistress 68 times throughout the course of that night. At 12:54 a.m., Matthew's cell phone received a text message from Jessica's phone stating, quote, "I can't do this anymore. Take care of Tolan and Tyler. Please tell them I love them every day. I've been suffering for a while now and no one has noticed. Here lately, I have not been able to recognize the person I see in the mirror. This is not the first time I have had suicide thoughts. I love you and the boys." End of quote. Instead of responding to Jessica, Matthew first sends a text to his mistress saying, quote, "Haha, I'm sorry, I didn't think about that," end quote. At 12:55 a.m., Matthew calls 911 and requests emergency medical services. He tells the dispatcher that he is worried about his wife and a text he had received from her, and that he is driving home at 90 miles an hour while on the phone with them, and says he will be home, quote, "in about 2 minutes," end quote. He explains that his wife is having suicide thoughts and tells her about the message he had received from Jessica's phone just a minute or so before. He also explains that Jessica is alone in the house with their 2 small children and he is rushing home, quote, "just to make sure nothing is going to happen to them," end of quote. The dispatcher asks if there are any weapons in the home, and Matthew tells her that his service weapon is the only one. Around 4 to 5 minutes after hanging up with 911 and arriving back at his residence, Matthew again texts his mistress and says, quote, "give me a few to text back, long story, tell you later," end quote. Matthew reported that he immediately ran into the home and directly to the master bedroom, where he noticed the closet door was closed and locked and Jessica was nowhere in sight. He says he started trying to bust the closet door open or kick it down to open it somehow with no luck, all the while screaming Jessica's name and getting no response. After trying and failing at his attempts to get the closet door open, Matthew ran into the kitchen and grabbed his police radio and called for help. He said, quote, "I believe I just heard a shot fired coming into my residence. I just came up the stairs. 2 rounds. Be advised, I smell gun smoke and can't get an answer to the door, end of quote. According to the official reports, multiple officers arrived on the scene at the Boynton home within seconds and started making their way into and throughout the home. The officers reported hearing 8-month-old Tyler's crying and seeing 2-year-old Tolan still fast asleep. They approached the locked closet door and started yelling Jessica's name, but also received no answer. They then kicked the closet door open and found Jessica Boynton lying on the closet floor with her long blonde hair drenched in blood to the point that the color of her actual hair was unrecognizable. There was a pillow with a large blood stain on it underneath her head. Her husband's .40 caliber Glock service weapon was underneath her body. As the officers were going through the closet in search of evidence and just examining the scene, they were completely shocked to see Jessica moving. She was still breathing and alive. Jessica was not only alert enough to try and fend off certain officers who were trying to get her help and help her out of the closet and onto the floor where EMTs could work on her, she also had the strength to somehow reach up and grab one of the EMTs' hands while he felt for her pulse. What was thought at first to be due to the amount of blood in Jessica's hair, neither the EMTs nor the police were able to find the gunshot wound in Jessica's head. They proceeded to load her into the ambulance so she could be rushed to the nearest hospital for treatment. The police found 2 bullet holes in the closet. When forensics evaluated the crime scene/closet later on, they determined the trajectory of the bullets to be one going upward at a 54-degree angle and one going upward at a 25-degree angle. It was also determined that each bullet hole was found in a different wall of the closet. At 1:13 a.m., Spalding County Sheriff Wendell Beam was notified of the situation by dispatch. Wendell was not only the county sheriff, but also Matthew Boynton's grandfather. Immediately after notifying Sheriff Beam, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, or GBI, was also notified and asked to assist in the investigation of the case, which was already being called a suicide attempt already. They started with the other people in the apartment complex Matthew and Jessica were living in. The downstairs neighbor and Jessica's close friend informed the officers of a few things. One of the first things she told them was that Jessica was not now, nor had she ever been, suicidal. She told them about Matthew's affair with his coworker, the dispatcher, and she even told them an interesting story about something that had happened just a couple of days earlier. The neighbor told the police that a couple nights earlier, Jessica had actually called the police on Matthew and reported that he had taken off once again with the couple's 2 young children and was not answering calls or returning texts, and Jessica was extremely worried. Matthew ended up returning home before the police could even start an investigation, though, as he had been tipped off by his mistress dispatcher, messaging him through Facebook and warning him that he should head home immediately because Jessica had just called and reported that he had taken the children without her knowledge again. She also told investigators where they could find Jessica's secret notebook containing all of Matthew's indiscretions and everything going wrong in the relationship that Jessica had been documenting for over a year at that point. The couple's pending divorce and the fact that Jessica had an appointment to see a divorce lawyer and officially file the following Monday was also called to their attention by several other neighbors as well. Some neighbors also reported hearing a single gunshot coming from the Boynton residence at around 10:45 p.m., which would have been almost immediately after the couple returned home from their Walmart trip the previous evening. Right around the time when Officer Trammell was called out to interview Matthew about his non-emergency call to report Jessica physically abusing him and him having to leave her at the Walmart as she stormed off and refused to return home with the family. And remember, this was a lie, as surveillance video from the Walmart parking lot shows the entire family, Jessica included, leaving and getting into the family vehicle and driving off together. Later that same morning, Matthew Boynton was interviewed by his co-workers at the Griffin Police Department and the GBI. He immediately admitted to having an affair, but claimed that Jessica had had affairs too. Matthew even went so far as to tell the investigator that the couple's youngest son, Tyler, wasn't his and was in fact a product of one of these alleged affairs Jessica had had on him. He reiterated that Jessica was physically abusive towards him and admitted that they both were looking forward to the divorce being finalized and moving on with their lives. The GBI agent interviewing him asked if he had changed his clothes from the time he had called police to his house earlier in the 911 call to when he was currently being interviewed, and Matthew claimed that he hadn't. We know this too is a lie because on the Walmart footage of the couple, Matthew is seen very clearly wearing a gray sweater, and on the police body cam footage of when they first showed up to the house after Matthew's 911 call, he was wearing a bright red sweatshirt/hoodie. Matthew informed the investigators that he had been careful not to change his clothes or wash his hands, as being a police officer himself, he knew his clothes and hands would be swabbed for gunshot residue or GSR. When the agent informed Matthew that they would be taking his clothes from him so they could run some tests on them, Matthew responded with, quote, "Okay, that's fine, absolutely. I didn't try to brush anything off. I didn't try to wash off anything because I knew GSR and all that would be involved," end quote. While Matthew was being interviewed, police back at the house were starting to process the scene. They started with the theory that Jessica had entered the closet and locked it, and while facing the back wall, took Matthew's service weapon and shot herself in the head. This was the shot they found that entered the top left portion of the closet wall. The second shot, however, was much more confusing and hard for the investigators to explain. The bullet had entered the back wall of the closet, and based on the trajectory, the gun would have either had to have been fired from the floor or very close to it in order for the bullet to have ended up where it did. Forensic analysis later on also discovered that the first shot Jessica had allegedly fired would have injured her enough that she would have been rendered completely incapable of firing the second shot. Investigators also came across the diary Jessica's friends and neighbors had told them about, although it wasn't hidden but laying in plain sight on a shelf on the top of some clothes and was missing a few pages that had obviously been torn out, but that to this day, they have never been recovered either. Those pages have never been found. Further testing of Matthew's service weapon did find a little bit of Jessica's DNA on it, but neither her hands nor Matthew's hands were ever swabbed for gunshot residue analysis. Although Matthew's clothes were collected the morning he did his interview, they also were never analyzed for GSR or any other evidence at all. Another interesting bit of information forensics came across while examining the closet/crime scene was that aside from the large pool of blood on the pillow underneath Jessica's head, there was no other blood anywhere in or near the closet, including but not limited to there not being any gun spatter at all that investigators would normally see on the walls, ceiling, and possibly floor, where it would be found in 99.9% of the time in the cases of gunshot victims. The police recovered one bullet from the scene but couldn't find the second, so they just assumed, because, you know, that's great police work, just assuming things, it would be recovered later and was probably lodged inside either Jessica's skull or somewhere in her body. However, the doctor treating Jessica not only never found that bullet, but he concluded that Jessica had been the victim of blunt force trauma and wasn't shot at all, not in the head nor anywhere else for that matter. She was not a gunshot victim, neither self-inflicted nor shot by anyone else. She was not shot. He found no bullets, no bullet fragments, and her head wound was not consistent at all with any kind of gunshot wound he had ever seen. This doctor had more than 30 years of experience in treating trauma patients, including victims of gunshot wounds, and was highly respected in his field of expertise. Jessica had a severely fractured skull and would have had to have held the gun at a near impossible angle in order to even hit herself with the butt of it. It simply wasn't possible that Jessica had inflicted any of the wounds on herself, according to this doctor's report. Other evidence he found that was inconsistent with Jessica having fired a gun was her hands being, quote, in pristine condition, end quote, with no powder burns or blood on her hands. Lastly, the doctor pointed out that there was no investigation done by the police or the GBI during Jessica's hospital stay. In fact, he stated that nobody had even reached out to him for his findings and examination report until July 20th, which was 3 whole months after the incident originally took place. Due to severe swelling of the brain and trauma, Jessica was put in a medically induced coma for 3 weeks after initially arriving at the hospital. Family and friends, as well as hospital staff, thought it unlikely she would ever pull through due to the severity of her wounds. Matthew Boynton never once visited his wife during her entire hospital stay. In fact, even while she was in her coma, Matthew was moving in with his mistress and removing Jessica's things without the knowledge or permission of obviously Jessica, but of her family too, from the couple's home where the incident had taken place. On May 10th, Jessica was out of her coma, stable, and ready to speak to investigators about what had happened the night before in early morning hours of the incident. Due to the severe brain trauma, though, unfortunately, and the severity of her injuries, Jessica can't recall most of what happened that night. Here is the official report she allegedly gave to the Griffin Police Department or to its investigators in charge of her case. Jessica reported that she and Matthew had been arguing before going to the Walmart about an explicit photo he had received from his mistress, and continued arguing during the drive there and also while in Walmart, which is why she stormed out. She remembers arriving home from buying the baby formula, and while Matthew went directly to lay down in her bed, she realized she needed to go and take care of something at the apartment complex's main office. She had to use the fax machine there, and it was a pressing issue involving a medical bill for one of their children. It couldn't wait until the next morning. She asked Matthew to either drive her over to the office or watch the children while she drove herself, so she didn't have to drag them inside with her and could just be in and out, as it was getting late and she had her first day of work early the following morning. Matthew refused to do either of these things, and after asking him 3 to 4 times, she packed the kids into the car and went with them to the building's office to fax the paperwork. This only took a few minutes, and upon returning to the house, Jessica put the children down for bed, and after arguing with Matthew about his deciding to go to the Waffle House with his friend and co-worker so late at night, she slammed the door in his face and he left. This is when she entered the walk-in closet to choose an outfit for her first day of work. This is all Jessica can remember from that night, and to this day, she has no recollection of anything that had happened after this point. Jessica vehemently denies the fact that she was ever suicidal, and also that she sent that seemingly suicidal text from her phone to Matthew on the night in question. She believes Matthew grabbed her unlocked phone and sent the message from hers into his himself. She stated that she was extremely happy to be getting a divorce and was actually relieved she had proof Matthew was having an affair, and she could finally prove it because she felt this would help her to gain full custody of her children in the divorce proceedings, which was her main goal. She also claims that she didn't even know how to remove Matthew's gun from its holster, let alone know how to fire it. She knew this because one night Matthew had asked her to grab it for him so he could clean it, and she struggled to get it out, and Matthew ended up having to do it. This is backed up by multiple family members and friends who agree Jessica had no knowledge of how to handle a firearm at all. After completing what they say was a thorough investigation into all of the evidence, the GBI and Griffin Police Department ruled that this was a suicide attempt by Jessica and closed the case. The evidence they point to, which they say brought them to this conclusion, was the suicidal text from Jessica's phone to Matthew and Jessica's DNA being found on Matthew's service weapon, which the investigators still claim Jessica used to try and kill herself by shooting herself in the head, despite even the doctor's report that Jessica wasn't at all shot. After finally being released from the hospital, Matthew was granted full custody of the couple's 2 children, with Jessica being given only supervised visitation once a week due to her officially having tried to commit suicide while alone in the house with children. The courts felt she was unstable and forced her into many services, such as but not limited to parenting classes and extensive psychiatric evaluations and treatments. Jessica gets visitation of the children now, with Matthew still having primary care and custody of them to this very day. Do I even have to say what I think about this? In my opinion, she did not try to shoot herself, and I think the doctor's report stating that there aren't any gunshot wounds should be enough for the GBI and the Griffin County Sheriffs to reopen the investigation, but they're not going to because Matthew Boynton is a good old boy. Not anymore, though. He didn't get in trouble for what I believe, in my opinion, he did to Jessica, right? Because that's not a fact. He's never been convicted of that crime. I believe he tried to kill Jessica by bashing her on the back of the head with a service revolver or something else. He's the one who tried to murder his wife and his kid's mother with his kids in the house. In my opinion, allegedly. Come for me if you want. You all know where I'm at right here in the comments, right? So anyway, I think when he called that officer to his house, Officer Trammell, and the officer didn't speak to Jessica, I think Jessica was already dying in the closet, and Matthew was using this as his alibi so Trammell could say, well, you know, I was at the house and I didn't see Jessica there and whatever, okay? He's crazy. But he's not a police officer anymore, and he did go to jail for a little while, a very short while, not because of what I believe he did to Jessica, but because he had taken some things of Jessica's, like her laptop or something, out of the house and hid it on her. And when she went to the police and told them that Matthew had her laptop and these other things, he said he didn't. And because he lied to the police, he did a little bit of time. Can you imagine this woman's life? Someone allegedly, right, tries to kill her, and then this person is given full custody of her kids and she has to be supervised by them because she's made out to be the bad guy. Welcome to America. This pisses me off just as much as Caleb's case, because same state, like what is going on in Georgia, right? Guys, if you enjoyed this video and spending this time with me, please give it a big thumbs up. I would really appreciate it. Spread the love by sharing this video. Please subscribe if you aren't already. Make sure your notification bell is turned on, as YouTube really doesn't like to suggest videos with this kind of true crime content. Even a lot of my paranormal stuff, but you'll get notified every single time I post, and I do try to post at least 2 times a week. I'm trying for 3, but it's hard, guys. It's hard, but I'm doing the best I can. I absolutely love my job. I love and appreciate every single one of you and all the constant support you guys give me. You're behind me in everything I do every single day, and I love each and every one of you and appreciate you, again, so much for it. Please be sure also, and do me a huge favor, check out the description box. You'll find the 2-hour live stream interview with April Arrington, Caleb Smith's mother, all about his case on missing persons and mysteries that Steve Stockton and I did. Justice for Caleb Smith, and we will not stop until we get it. Podcast is coming soon. Keep saying it and saying it, but God is the one that's guiding us in that, so we're waiting for him to move on it. Also, the 3 live streams Stemma, Steve Stockton, and I do every week, Fireside Chat and Campfire Stories, each from 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Time, both on missing persons and mysteries every single week. And we have a new Wednesday night show now that Dezombified is on hiatus. It's from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time on this channel, Gemma Jade, and I always post it up. I always throw it on Facebook. Steve always posts it, and I'm also about to start my own TikTok. So guys, with all of that being said, please be kind to each other. It doesn't cost anything, can make you feel so good. Smile at a stranger, be kind to yourself, right? It costs nothing. Always go in grace. Have your best day. Have your best night. I will see you next time. Love ya. Muah. Bye-bye.